some of our improv challenges. So just so you know. So some of you may notice Charlie is here today. We haven't seen Charlie in a while, so good to see you, Charlie. After service, we are going to do some asset mapping in the social hall. You may have noticed there's a whole bunch of big sticky notes out on the tables, and there's things attached to windows. We're going to be moving and writing and laughing and talking today in the social hall. I hope you can make it, and all of the information that we gather today will be used to support programs in next year, but also for a grant we're trying to get with Indiana Landmarks Foundation. So it's important stuff, and I thank you for coming to participate. So I want to say that this space is unrecognizable from what it was yesterday, when more than 20 volunteers came and transformed our spaces to be able to host weddings for people from the LGBTQIA+ and the immigrant community who needed to move up their wedding dates. And we served 2 couples yesterday. Some of you, Barb already said that we were on Wish TV for a second time because a reporter came out yesterday. And Nancy just told me already a call came in this morning from someone who didn't know about yesterday. So we think this is a ministry that we may need to continue because of the amount of anxiety and the very real concerns in both the queer and the immigrant communities. And I especially want to thank, first of all, if you volunteered yesterday, will you please rise so we can acknowledge you and thank you? You cooked, you donated, you met with people, you witnessed the service. Katie's here. Hey, Katie. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I mean, we had everything. It was just incredible. Jennifer Carnahan and Rev Dorian really organized all of the logistical pieces, and then everyone showed up total game hats on yesterday to make things happen. It was just incredible. Couples felt held and loved, and it was exactly what our space is meant for, to show that love really does win, and we got to be together in community. It was just awesome. So thank you all so much for exemplifying how we can live our values. As we continue in our time together, let us acknowledge the land itself and those who've sustained it through the generations. We are upon the unceded land of the Lenape, Miamia, Kaskaskia, Shawnee, and Kickapoo people who were pushed from their land and whose children have been stolen for generations. As we continue to strive to be a community of justice, may we find ways to make real reparations. It's the time of year when we say Happy Holidays. And we went to ChatGPT to find out what ChatGPT had to say about the holidays that happen between November and January. As the sun sets on the festival of Diwali in November, we gather to celebrate the triumph of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, and hope over despair.
We come together in the spirit of hope, welcoming the possibility and power of hope's victory over despair.
As the winter solstice arrives, we acknowledge the cyclical nature of life, embracing the darkness as we await the return of light.
We rest in solidarity with all who seek balance and renewal in the changing seasons.
As we celebrate Christmas, we reflect on the messages of peace, goodwill, and compassion that inspire us to reach out to one another with love.
We open our hearts to the spirit of giving, nurturing the bonds that tie us together, and commit to welcome the stranger all year long.
With the arrival of Hanukkah, the festival of lights, we kindle our hearts with the warmth of remembrance and resilience, honoring the miracles that illuminate our paths.
We embrace the stories that connect us, finding strength in our shared humanity.
Kwanzaa invites us to recognize our roots and celebrate our heritage, fostering a sense of community and shared purpose.
We honor the power of reclaiming heritage that has been stolen and the diverse cultures that enrich our lives, affirming the beauty of our differences.
With the new year approaching, we reflect on the past, set intentions for the future, and celebrate the promise of new beginnings.
We gather with hope in our hearts, ready to embrace the journey ahead.
In this sacred space, let us lift our voices in gratitude for the myriad of traditions that inspire us, and let us affirm our commitment to peace, to justice, and to love.
Together, may we create a world where every voice is heard and every spirit is welcomed.
Come and let us worship together.
Spirit of improvisation, Reverend Katie will be lighting our chalice today. You've never lit the chalice?
I think so. This is great.
Well, this is good. I do also want to say it's really good to see everybody here today, to come out on a day that's a little bit on the dreary side, because when we show up like this, this is how, one of the ways we live our covenant. So today, this ritual does remind us to continually renew our promise, to live out our covenant, to put love into action, and to live out this community of faith, love and justice that we aim to be, which again, yesterday, was a very good example of how we were living into our covenant. And so if you would please rise in body or spirit as we share the words that are printed in your order of celebration in both Spanish and English. Also, if you are at home, if you would let us know in the chat where you're lighting your chalice from, we'd love to know. So let's speak the covenant in Spanish first, please. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es su ley. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos unos a otros. Este es nuestro pacto. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. Thank you. And I think you may be seated.
So I would love to hear why you think we say happy holidays at this time of year. Lay it on me. Shout it out, somebody. Oh, wait. Yes, inclusion. Hey, nice. I like this. Yeah, we're pros at this. Yes. We say happy holidays to be inclusive. A little bit later, we're going to talk about this whole war on Christmas nonsense. Right? Happy holidays. Is it a war on Christmas? No, it acknowledges Christmas too, doesn't it? And it acknowledges Christmas as part of a greater landscape of holidays that are occurring. And it actually, I would argue, acknowledges the spirit of Christmas, which includes welcoming the stranger. So every time we say happy holidays this year, I hope that you can bring that spirit of welcoming the stranger. And maybe even taking it a step farther and embracing Valerie Kaur's work of knowing that when we meet someone, they are a stranger we do not yet know, a part of ourselves that we do not yet know. Strangers are always someone we don't yet know, but they are a part of ourselves we do not yet know. And when we live from that place, perhaps we can live the spirit of Christmas, the spirit of happy holidays all year round. With that, I invite you to remain seated as the choir shares a special song for us that one day we will be singing. If you want to read along, it's number 179 in your hymnals.
Please join me in taking a few moments to note that which is currently bringing joy or sorrow to our community. We saw some snow this week, letting us know that winter begins this coming week, bringing with it rest, silence, and more snow. This is the 12th year anniversary of the lives lost to gun violence at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Reverend Katie?
I invite those among us who are mourning the loss of a loved one or the anniversary of a loss to please rise in body or spirit so we may bear witness. And let us hold the silence together. Wherever you are on your journey of grieving, may you always remember that you are a part of something larger and you are never alone. Thank you.
Let us also hold a moment of silence together for the joys and sorrows in our hearts that are yet unnamed. I feel a tension between the need for community and the desire to huddle in my house and ignore the rest of the world. I don't know if you feel that way, but I expect to be feeling that way a little more before the year is over. Don't get me wrong. Much of the joy I have in this world comes from the friendships I have found here with you. The Chalice Circles have been a source of comfort and reflection in a safe place. Whether it was a field trip to hear an appellate argument in our abortion case, the difficult topics in the Naughty Conversations course, or helping with Friendsgiving dinner, I have felt a part of the All Souls community. There are some among us who will cringe when the word politics pops up in church, because this is their safe place. I find it difficult to talk about justice outside of politics, because so much of our social dialogue occurs in the political arena. I felt betrayed after this last election. Part of me thinks we're getting what we deserve, and not in a good way. I know that there are good, thoughtful people on the other side of the fence from me, even here at All Souls. I look at my broader community and worry, how did we get here and what will be the results? As I listen to the political pundits dissect the election and the coming changes being brought by a new political administration, I need some hope from this community that whatever changes are ahead, the voices of reason will hold sway, that justice is a value that has not been cast aside, and that we can have meaningful dialogue with people on all sides of the political debate. While I'm huddling this holiday season and enjoying family time, I'm going to shake off the frustration and disbelief. At least I hope so. There is a new life coming into the world this May. Finally. I have to work for a better place for my grandchild if I do nothing else before I die. Whatever else the future holds, I know it holds the joy of new life. Hold on to this thought. This community can make this world a better place for all of us, whatever storms this winter brings.
Thank you, Crystal. I offer you these words by poet Nikki Giovanni, who passed earlier this week. This poem is called When I Die. When I die, I hope no one who ever hurt me cries, and if they cry, I hope their eyes fall out, and a million maggots that made up their brains crawl from the empty holes and devour the flesh that cover the evil that passed itself off as a person that I probably tried to love. When I die, I hope every worker in the National Security Council, the Interpol, the FBI, CIA Foundation for the Development of Black Women gets an extra bonus and maybe takes one day off and maybe even asks why they didn't work as hard for us as they did for them. But it always seems to be that way. Please don't let them read Nikki Rosa. Maybe just let some Black woman who called herself my friend go around and collect each and every book, and let some Black man who said it was negative of me to want him to be a man collect every picture and poster, and let them burn, throw acid on them, defecate on them as they did me when I tried to live. I do help you plan your memorials in advance. And it is a way to gift your family your final messages. I think I want to talk about rage. And I want to talk about how we don't process rage in our culture. We don't process grief. We don't process rage. Some of us come from cultures where we have all the feelings. I'll never forget my sweet husband, Sean, came into a moment where my mom and I were just talking in the kitchen, as we Argentines do, at our Argentine volume. And we were merely having a discussion, and he walked in and he was like, are they okay in here? Things sound a little heated. And my mom and I turned and looked at him, and he ran. We are very comfortable with our feelings. Whenever 5 of us are gathered, it sounds like 30 or more. And when we have something to say, sometimes it takes 20 minutes to get there because first all the feelings need to come out. And then we kind of get to the crux of things. And sometimes those feelings come out at each other all at the same time, with nobody necessarily listening to one another, but the feelings just being stated. And then we get to the listening part. But the feelings don't stay bottled up necessarily. And that's different for white-bodied folks who may have come up in culture. And you know, I had to consult an expert on this. So I read some of the Reverend Cecilia Kingman's Berry Street essay, because I really wanted to understand, like, white folks, how you got here. And how did the US get here, and how has our entire international landscape gotten to this place where authoritarianism is rising and really flaring up in different places across the globe? I will say a lot of that is because of US interference. But it's not just the US, you know. So Cecilia Kingman says, white children are often forced into the project of whiteness, needing to suppress parts of themselves to gain societal and familial approval, like those assigned a gender. White children learn to behave in ways that reinforce their perceived superiority, leading to trauma when they fail to meet those expectations. To fit in and to enjoy the privileges of whiteness, they cut off compassion and kinship with others. Many white individuals grapple with an internal conflict stemming from their ancestors' historical injustices, leading to a disconnect between reality and what they are taught, which in turn causes a moral injury that can be passed down through the generations. This injury, often considered taboo to discuss, fosters a susceptibility to fascism as individuals cling to beliefs of superiority while grappling with the trauma of conformity. The psychological framework created by this moral injury, where one trades parts of their identity for a false sense of superiority, renders them vulnerable to oppressive ideologies. Whew, that's thick. That is thick. And you might be hearing this thinking, first of all, that's a lot of words, but you might not feel like this represents you. So I invite you to consider what you've been taught about communities of color, about immigration, and what your lens is on international relations. For instance, were you taught in school or the media that those of us from South America or Central America had unstable governments and challenges holding on to democracy, that the US was perhaps responsible to support us or other countries across the world in order to protect democracy? I know I learned that in school in the US. I got a different story at home and from my grandfather, but I heard that a lot. And you know, it does beg the question, like, how much does our young country really know? But that's besides the point. This notion of US exceptionalism is rooted in white supremacy culture. And as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, our issues in South and Central America, as with other countries in the world, are often rooted in US interference. Here's another one. Imagine a map in your mind. And then I ask you, where is Africa? Where is Africa on your map? So Africa is far larger than it appears on most US maps and globes. Its size is strategically diminished, historically strategically diminished, for the benefit of white Euro supremacy. Wow. Yeah, that's right. And perhaps you were taught that Puerto Rico was a protectorate of the US, and that sometime in history, Puerto Rico needed our assistance. But what you might not have been taught is that women in Puerto Rico were sterilized without their consent, that the US pulls resources from Puerto Rico, they can't even get their own goods without them going to the US first to come back with taxes, and that they are taxed without the privilege of representation. And many people in Puerto Rico have been used without consent for medical experiments. This is something that some of us here may not have been taught. Therefore, you, me, we have all been steeped in white supremacy culture, and it has primed all of us for the current fascist regime. As Billy Joel said, and he's a Long Islander, so we love him, we didn't start the fire. When we talk about anti-racism work, we often talk about privilege, and sometimes we fall into a trap of thinking that all white-bodied people have all the privilege. And that is not true. Privilege is fluid and complex. Yes, there are more systems that privilege white-bodied people. Absolutely, absolutely, and we need to acknowledge that. But we also need to understand that for each of us here, every single one of us benefits from this system in one way or another. There are places where our privilege intersects with the oppression of another, and vice versa. For some of us, we are privileged with education, socioeconomic status, how we get our food, our location to power sources, or maybe something else. When we're doing anti-racism work and trainings, we often break into caucus spaces. And the reason we break into those spaces is because we have different work to do. In Black, Indigenous, people of color spaces, for some of us, it's learning where our power is and where our power and privilege intersects with the oppressions of others within our community, within the BIPOC community, or additional communities. So we have very, very different work to do. But in all of these places, our conversations, I hope, when we're doing the deeper work about how we are grieving and how we are processing our rage. One of the things that professionally I've had to manage is, I come from a really passionate culture. My natural volume is probably much higher than a lot of other people's. And when I say something, it can be received radically different than if a white male colleague were to say the same thing, probably even louder than me saying something. Because the person receiving information from me might have some unconscious biases that are perhaps reading what I'm saying as a threat or something else. And that is something that I'm always feeling like I'm navigating, because I never know, I'm a light-skinned woman of color. How people read me in any given situation can be fluid and flexible. But it's an awareness I have, and how I'm able to process grief and rage in the kitchen with my mother is radically different than how I might be able to process in a space that included white body folks. So this being separate to have our conversations is really important, and it helps us to be able to dig more deeply into the work, not because we're trying not to offend people, but because we do need to be able to say things imperfectly and also speak to folks who have similar experiences so we can get at what's really rising up and do as Valerie Kaur recommends, and take our rage and use it like a laser to create a new world, to cut away from this world that which is not equitable, that which is not just, and birth a new world that is loving and just and truly for everyone in practice. And we can't do that unless we have some time apart in our different identity groups. Sometimes even when a group is big enough, we have another bump out for the LGBTQIA+ community. These spaces are so important, and we'll be offering more of those spaces in the coming year. I want you to know that. And we might even offer a space for folks who work at IU and maybe some folks who do government work also, because if we find that there are different affinity groups that need spaces to process, to get into grief, to get to a place of deeper understanding, we'll create those so we can do our separate learning and then come back together more healed. And part of why I want to talk about rage today is I am continuing to watch what's happening online with post the murder of the U.S. healthcare CEO. And our healthcare, which is a part of white supremacy culture, it kills so many people each and every year. So many people. And if you've been denied a claim, if someone you love has been denied a claim, if you've lost someone whose claim was denied, this hurts deeply. But unprocessed rage, unprocessed grief that leads to violence will not get us to the better world. It won't. Our Universalist heritage promises that there is a part inside of each of us that is good. Before the world has truly had its way with us, there is this innate, inherent beauty, love, and goodness. And science tells us that even right now, as we're sitting here, we are being remade moment to moment. New cells birthing life. Each time we meet each other, we meet someone new, someone being reborn. And theologian Catherine Keller says that in her mind, God is not omnipotent, but omnipotential. So for her, perhaps the holy is in those cells being made new. There is an omnipotential each time we meet each other to process our grief and process our rage and find love. Violence will not help us find the love that leads to healing. Gandhi taught this, Dr. King taught us this, Nelson Mandela taught us this. And man, is it hard to hold that space, isn't it? And I want to be clear with you, my inner Long Island girl wants to kick off her shoes, pull out her hoop earrings, and go full fisticuffs. Every time I see a certain person who challenges my universalism on the news. But I know that rage, unprocessed, won't help me. It won't help you. It won't help any of us stop the disease. I want us to sing a little bit, and then we're going to talk about some tenets of authoritarianism I think you should know about, and how we can use those to create a different world. We're going to sing hymn number 318, We Would, We Won. Please give yourself a break and rise and body your spirit. all to go home and Google Reverend Cecilia Kingman, Berry Street essay, and read her entire essay on authoritarianism and Christian nationalism. It is fantastic. I'm going to share with you some pieces where she quotes a Jewish scholar named Jason Stanley, and a lot of this comes from his 10 Tactics of Fascism, which is another great video for you to watch. So the first tactic is a mythic past. Fascists always present the idea that there was once a glorious past. Does this sound familiar to anyone? This is often presented in the idea that we were once a great nation. The second tactic is propaganda. And all social movements and all politics use propaganda. Fascist propaganda, however, makes the distinction between friends and enemies. It casts the other as a threat and presents the idea that these others are fundamentally opposed to the nation. Tactic number 3, anti-intellectualism. Authoritarianism presents a cult of the leader. In a fascist system, the leader and only the leader sets the rules about what is true or false. So we see the takeover of the country's media, schools, and cultural institutions to enforce what the leader says is true. Institutions that teach multiple perspectives on history always threaten the leader. Expertise is always a threat. Science is a threat to the leader. If intellectuals are telling the truth, they are a threat. So anti-racism, critical race theory, these are threats. These kinds of complex conversations that I'm inviting you to consider, places where our Unitarian Universalist faith makes space for hope and healing, they are a threat. Kingman continues to quote Stanley, the creation of a form of unreality, number 4. Kingman says, Stanley, in his work, reports that if you are going to rip the heart out of democracy, you get people used to lies. You shift that Overton window. Authoritarians undermine what we know to be true and convince the population that A, everyone is lying, and B, the lies don't matter. In political terms, the center of democracy is truth, and you cannot function as a democratic citizen if you are being lied to. I think a lot about the book, The New Jim Crow, which is a great one if you haven't read it yet, that you should read, which separates as you read it, you can see where the class of poor white-bodied Europeans was separated from the BIPOC community and how that has continued to be used as a tool of oppression. And that's important history that has primed us for this moment in time. And I continue with number 5, which is hierarchy is absolutely central to fascism. It's the big lie at the center of things: white supremacy, white Christian supremacy, male supremacy, heterosexual supremacy, able-bodied supremacy. These lies assign people superiority and the privileges and benefits that go with that superiority. Number 6 is victimhood. Once you've convinced people that they are justifiably higher in hierarchy, then you can convince them that they are victims of inequality. For instance, happy holidays. We said this is not a war on Christmas, but fascist systems would have us believe that this act of love is somehow an act of violence or victimization. It makes people feel as if they're losing their rightful place. Kingman quotes Ageris Dixon in the book Truth Out, who says, fascists believe that democracy has failed them and allowed the majority to be tyrannized by communities that have no right to power. Therefore, fascists seek to eliminate both democratic processes and marginalized communities to return to an often fictitious and glorified past where their power reigned unchecked. Law and order. Under fascism, the definition of law-abiding is loyalty to the dominant group. Who among us has not heard that it is my way or the highway. Sexual anxiety. In every case, across different cultural and historic settings, the fascist leader will always say, your women and children are under threat. You need a strong man to protect your families. Sodom and Gomorrah. Fascist movements typically rest on an urban-rural divide, and fascists use a toxic trope of the biblical story, Sodom and Gomorrah, in this trope. Pure, hardworking, real members of the nation live in rural areas where they work with their hands and work hard. But when politicians talk about inner city voters or urban voters, we know what they mean. Black and queer folks. They're referring to immigrants, they're referring to Jewish kin and other people that fascists seek to control or eliminate. The 10th tactic is what Stanley, a child of the Holocaust survivors, she says, calls Arbeit macht frei. Work shall make you free. These words were hung over the gate of Auschwitz, and fascists create an idea that minorities, immigrants, and others are lazy. We get stuff for free. And that somehow we need to be taught a work ethic. The mechanism that they use is forced labor, whether it is prison labor or work requirements for benefits. The targeted groups must provide free labor as supposed moral education. Project 2025 and all of its horrific policies are rooted in these 10 hallmarks. And I invite you to use these as a lens and think about, I know some of us here are trying to make sense about how people we know and love might have voted or might live in such a way or support policies that otherwise seem out of character with their values or who we think they are. And if you're noticing that dissonance, somewhere in there is unprocessed grief, unprocessed rage. There might even be the trope, and my beloved white, cis, hetero, male folks in this space right now, I love you. When we talk about white supremacy culture, we are not saying you are bad. You're not. You're not. In fact, we need you. Those of us with marginalized identities need you. And we need you processing rage and grief and doing the deeper work to create change. One of the lies, one of the things that has primed us for this moment in time is this trope by this rising energy of fascism that somehow connects you to victimhood. And we can do differently here. If we can have these deeper conversations, if we can talk about white supremacy culture and have you hear happy holidays, like working on the systems, working to dismantle them and create something new, it's gonna take all of us. But beloveds, if when I say that, you hear that I think you're bad, we can't get anywhere. We won't get anywhere. And we need you, those of us with perhaps more marginalized identities, we need folks who have more privilege to do your work so you can bring people along who will never listen to me or to other folks in the BIPOC community. The folks who Nikki Giovanni wants maggots to come out of the brains. Our universalist faith calls us to love them too, but beloveds, some of us need to love folks who are on the extremes from a safe distance. So it's a lot safer for some of us to enter into these difficult conversations. Please reference the previous video on why we don't agree to disagree. for tools in navigating these conversations. And I promise we'll have more of those conversations too. But as we do this work, as we talk about the hard things, as we open our hearts, and as we open our spaces as allies to folks within our community and in the larger community, let us continue to do this from a place of love, but not the easy love that is all pixie dust and rainbows, but the hard love, with the hard conversations that take us deeper into our faith, that challenge us to look at ourselves, our lives, and the lives of others more deeply, so that we may form bonds so strong and so unbreakable that we cannot be cut away from each other. And so that, like a mighty laser, we have the ability to cut a new world from this old one. We can do this together. What we have in common, each of us gathered here, is that love is our spirit, and service is our law. So may that love guide us, and may that commitment to service be the glue that keeps us in accountable relationship as we do the tough stuff and together make a new fractal for a new world we do not yet understand, but have the capacity to create. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
I love that song. This week, we are sharing our offering plate with the Foundation for Farm Workers, which aligns with our UU goals. This nonprofit supports the East Coast Migrant Head Start program. It helps families when the school lacks necessary resources. It helps families to recover from financial distress, to be free from fear of family separation, and to pursue their educational goals. To contribute, you can gift cash or a check into the collection plate. Or if online, you can go to allsoulsindy.org, where you will find a link that says Give to All Souls here on the left side. It's beneath the description for today's service. If you're paying online with a check, please note if your gift is a pledge payment or if it's for Share the Plate. Thank you for your generosity in supporting the mission of All Souls, especially now, and for your continued hope and love for one another and for this world. The morning offering may now be given and gratefully received.
So that's the hymn I was singing before service started. It is one of my favorites. And you know, it's a call to a way of being that I really believe we can create here at All Souls. Like, I really believe that because of the way we embrace love as the Spirit, that we can do tougher, deeper work of being in accountability with each other, with love at the center, and to make space at the table for lots of great conversations and, oh my goodness, the food. If I didn't love you as people, I say this often and mean it wholeheartedly, I would stay for the food. As we leave this space today and prepare to enter into some deeper conversations that I promise will be joyful, I know asset mapping, again, sounds like paint drying. It is not. We will have fabulous conversations at our tables. We will get into a creative energy, and together, from a loving, creative space, begin to create that world we're dreaming about and to understand more deeply. I think yesterday was a clue as to how we might fit into creating this new world order by centering love. But I know, and the leaders of this great congregation know, that alone we don't have the answer. So let's come up with those fun answers together and get to work with some joy and snacks. there's all kinds of stuff left over from the reception yesterday. Where the Katie sneak out, because Katie's responsible for a lot of that deliciousness. So please go grab some snacks, and we will get to work soon. And if you can't stay today, if something touched your heart or struck a chord, maybe you're sad or you're mad or you're happy, reach out to me and let's have a deeper conversation this week. I'm also really present that I centered a lot of the white experience today. So my beloved BIPOC folks know that I'm available to have a deeper conversation between now and when things start, and also during the week this week too, because that's important, and we may need that space too. So I'm here for you all. You are loved. And together, when we center love, anything is possible.
All right, we have a little Swahili to sing. Are you ready? Yes. Repeat after me. Bwana, awa, bariki, milele, ukincha, Bwana. You know the whole song. Let's do this.
Blessing